When comparing a character or a numeric vector with a string or an integer, if you think about it, what happens under the hood is that each member of the vector is compared to that string or integer. A while ago, at an earlier video, I used Manim's animation to illustrate how a comparison is done element-wise between the members of a vector and a single value, whether that value be numeric or string. So, when comparing a numeric vector with an integer, each integer of the vector is going to be compared separately with the integer on the right. That is why the output is a new logical vector with true and false values that indicate whether the comparison between the member of the vector at the respective index position is true or false. So, this kind of repeating element-wise comparison between a vector and a single value is called vectorization. Now, how is vectorization related to for loops? A for loop is a repeating or iterating execution of one or more commands called on all the members of a container object, such as a vector. So, in other words, a loop refers to applying a set of functions on each element of a container object. How does that sound? Essentially, vectorization is an alternative term for looping through a number of elements that belong to a vector and applying operations on them. And then you may be asking, if vectorization is simply a type of a looping process, what is the big deal here? Isn't that the same? Well, actually, vectorization and looping are not identical. Let me come back to that in the next video after introducing for loops in detail. For loops are used in the majority, if not all, programming languages, and it is important to get the idea behind the for loop. The best way to understand a for loop is to see some code. Let me first write the simplest possible for loop. Now, any for loop has the following structure. First, you write the for keyword, then an iteration variable. No worries, I will talk about why this type of variable is called iteration in a moment. And then the keyword in, followed by a container object. By container object, I recall that we mean any object in R that consists of one or more simple objects. So, vectors are container objects, as well as data frames. The keyword in has a pretty intuitive interpretation since it helps you read the whole line of code as follows. Take every element in the vector vec1 and assign it to the iteration variable enum. After the container object, a pair of curly braces signifies a block of code that will be executed similarly to the if and else if statements. The big difference is that the block of code is not executed under a condition, but it runs unconditionally many times. But how many times? The answer is that the code runs as many times as the length of a vector. Let's run it and break down the code execution to each step. So there are two things that happen while running a for loop. The print statement runs 4 times, since the output, as you can see, consists of 4 different numbers in separate lines. And B, before the print statement runs each time, the enum in the parentheses takes the value that the iteration variable has been assigned of the vector's members. So let's take it step by step. The first of the 4 times that the code within the curly braces will be executed, the iteration variable enum will take the value 1. Then the print statement will be run, and since there is no other line within this block of code, the first iteration is over. In the second iteration, enum is assigned a new value, the second value of the vector vec1, which is 4. The print statement prints out the value 4. In the third iteration, enum is assigned the value, the third value of vec1. So as you can see, enum is assigned iteratively each time a new value from this container object vec1, starting from the leftmost member and going to the rightmost one. And in the third iteration, enum takes the value 5, then the print prints out 5. And the fourth iteration is the last iteration, since vec1 consists only of 4 members. So in this case, enum is assigned the value of 7, and print prints out 7. And that is the end of the for loop, since there is no other member of vec1 to traverse for.